Yeah, definitely. Our vaginas are self-cleansing, and unfortunately, not a lot of women know that, and so they're putting different products within their vagina because they're being told to do so through social media. And so I want to also mention another idea that I've seen roaming around is that if you eat pineapples, your vagina will smell good. So speak to that a little bit. Is it true or not?
Yeah, there's certainly no evidence to say that that's particularly true. I don't know. I can only assume that for whatever reason, women, I think, get ashamed or nervous or embarrassed that maybe their vagina smells or is just gross or doesn't look right or something. I don't know who's kind of subtly telling women to worry about this or what, or they just do or something. But the way that your vulva looks is normal. There's no standard of what it's supposed to look like. Just like faces, everybody has eyes, nose, and a mouth and ears, but you can tell obviously people look different, but all the basics are still there, and it's a face. Same thing with the vulva. There's a huge variety in what looks normal, what people think is normal. For the most part, you see a lot of faces, but you probably only sort of see your own vulva and vagina, maybe with, I don't know, porn and those kinds of images. It's that is all created for a purpose, and that is not any standard that anybody should be living up to. There's no true normal because it's all normal. And same thing with like odors and those kinds of things. Unless it's really, really different from usual or is particularly foul or things like that that are signs of an infection and other things going on. Otherwise, it's probably normal. And this happens to men too. Just men don't talk about. I don't know why. Men have these same issues with odors, things being normal. Same thing. But for some reason, women are kind of programmed to be told you need to do something specific to make that better and improve. Yeah, try these juices, try these other things. And there's just no science behind that, to be honest. It's all just, I don't know, just a bunch of talk that doesn't have a lot of evidence to it.
Dr. Bedell, thank you for sharing that with us. We'd also like to know how often should women ages 17 through 22 visit their gynecologist per year?
Oh, good question. So I think that is actually the perfect time to either start seeing a gynecologist or continue, assuming that you're generally healthy, don't have any major medical problems going on, and don't otherwise have any specific issues, then at least just once a year. Even if you don't even necessarily need an exam that year. I think that's a big reason why patients avoid the gynecologist, is they're afraid of this uncomfortable, maybe embarrassing exam. But it's actually not necessary to have an exam every time you go, depending on why you're going. Most types of birth control don't require you to have an exam before you get it. There are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, no. So just once a year, talk about pregnancy planning, talk about your risks for STDs, just talk about, discharge, periods, bleeding patterns, those kinds of things. Yeah, once a year.
Awesome. So, what are some common gynecological health issues that women ages 17 to 22 should be aware of?
Sure. So that age range, STDs are very common, HPV being the most common. HPV is human papillomavirus. It has a big range of different ways it can affect a patient. Most cases, patients don't really know they have it. They don't have any, they don't have any symptoms, no signs, no irritation, nothing. They feel perfectly fine, and they would otherwise never know they have it unless they get tested. And it's very contagious and very common. About 80% of adults, so by the time you turn 40, 50, 80% of the population, men and women, will have it at some point. It can cause nothing. It can cause warts, which are a little bit more obvious. It can also lead to cancer of the cervix, of the vagina, of the penis, and also the anus in men. And something that we screen early for to prevent those things from happening, hopefully. UTIs, or urinary tract infections, are also pretty common in that age group. Pregnancy or wanting contraception is very common as well. So thinking about that is important. What else? Yeast infections or abnormal discharge type infections like bacterial vaginosis. Bacterial vaginosis is actually a little more common than yeast infections, even though I find a lot of women have never heard of it. It's a similar type of abnormal discharge that presents a little bit differently, but is not technically transmitted sexually, just like a yeast infection. Neither are STDs, but can affect the vagina and cause discomfort. I'd say those are the big things.
Dr. Bedell, there's also a very interesting question I'd like to pose. I myself have found myself doing lots of research. I'm not necessarily a medical student or anything. In fact,
Okay.
I'm not even pursuing STEM. But I'd like to ask for your opinion. And do you think there should be more research done in terms of like vaginal health or vaginal infections? Because you search online, say what to do when you have a yeast infection, and you see random WebMD articles saying, oh, just have some yogurt or put vinegar, or like it's all this crazy stuff. Do you think there needs to be more research done on vaginal health?
Yes, I definitely do. For the most part, I think where we need a little bit more help in figuring it out is for the most part, patients, when they get a yeast infection, it usually is pretty treatable with a typical antifungal medication. So by and large, it's easy, kind of run-of-the-mill textbook. But there's definitely a significant percentage of patients. Well, number one, we don't know who's going to get a yeast infection and who isn't. That's a mystery. Why is that the case? Some women get several. Some women just have one their whole life. Some women have none. Why is that? So that's definitely worth figuring out. And for the women who get them all the time, kind of quote unquote, there are some who get symptoms with almost every period they have. There are some who just get them a couple times a year, some only when they're pregnant, XYZ. Why is that? And then why does it keep coming back? Also, there are some theories, I think, coming out now that maybe diet does have something to do with it. Patients who eat a lot more kind of processed sugars, beer, things that are really starchy, maybe they're more likely to get recurrent yeast infections, because the theory is that their gut actually is colonized, and because the vagina and the gut kind of have a close by opening, that maybe there's some cross-contamination there that causes chronic yeast infections. But why do some patients get that and some don't? And we haven't figured that out yet. And I think there's been slightly more attention, at least kind of starting to figure that out. If you've heard the expression, the vaginal microbiome, just kind of the normal healthy bacteria that's supposed to be on the inside of the vagina, just like the inside of your gut has a microbiome, the inside of your mouth, your nose, that's actually protecting you from certain type of infections. What is it that's going wrong in some women that makes them more vulnerable to these things, or what's going so well that some women will never get an infection? And those things, I think, deserve more attention, because these things really are a quality of life issue for women. They're super common. They're very irritating. They affect many things, including your sexual activity and just overall comfort and just, yeah, and irritation. So definitely deserves more attention.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned a great point, Dr. Bedell, about having a healthy diet and how that correlates with keeping your vagina happy and healthy. So speak about the importance of staying active and eating healthy.
So you know what? As much as I love diet and exercise and maintaining the healthy lifestyle, I'm not sure at this point how does that come into play with overall vaginal health. Again, like I said, there's some theory that these highly processed sugars, starch, and having a really high carb diet could put somebody at risk for developing a yeast infection, or especially chronic yeast infections. There are plenty of people who have that diet also and who don't ever get a yeast infection, or just get them here and there. So hard to say. But that being said, some patients get more vulvar irritation, I guess, after exercising. It's a good idea to not kind of hang on to your sweaty clothes and kind of sit around in that environment, because heavy moisture definitely promotes bacterial growth, yeast overgrowth. So a good idea to, after you exercise, kind of get in a routine of at least just rinsing off or showering. or just changing your clothes to help with your vaginal health. But otherwise, maintaining a normal weight and healthy diet, therefore, is very helpful for maintaining normal periods, actually. So there's good evidence that patients who have irregular periods, even if they lose 5 to 10% of their body weight, if they're already overweight or obese, can actually go back to having normal periods. And that can help with fertility and just in general, on patients who are overweight over time, unfortunately, are at higher risk of developing cancer of the uterus over many years of being overweight. So that definitely comes into play as well.
We really appreciate all this information because, you know, there's like we said, a lot of like women in college don't know this information. And like how I said, I didn't even learn how to properly wash my vagina until I was 18. Like,
Yeah,
of course, I mean, right, but with the wrong things. So
sure.
we would just like to wrap up the conversation, and we would like to end with our signature fill in the blank question. So we'd like to ask you, to be a woman is to.
To be a woman, I think, is to be empowered. I think that's especially important now for many reasons. And I can definitely see it in my patient population, and even just comparing the patients that my mom sees, or not the patients, but her experience compared to mine. Definitely women are asking more questions. I think they are coming to the gynecologist more often, even with their moms now. And the moms are involved in the conversation, and it seems like less of this, oh my God, I can't reveal anything in front of my mom, I'm so embarrassed. But I really love to see that even in younger women. It's like, oh, thank goodness they're here, they're establishing care, and they feel comfortable in front of their mom talking freely about things. I think that that's great and definitely different nowadays. So definitely to be empowered.
That's amazing. So, as we wrap up, we want to give you an opportunity to share any last words.
This might sound really ridiculous, but as far as I think a lot of women are curious what the other vulvas look like, and just to really get a sense of what I mean when I say there is no true normal. There's so many different variations. An artist, maybe I want to say at least 10 years ago or so, did this project. He's European, called The Great Wall of Vagina, where he did plaster casts of the vulva of women all different ages, had kids, no kids, and just made these little casts that he would put on a wall in these museums, so you could see kind of anonymously all these different types of vulva that exist, and to be able to look at it. It's a very respectful project. Anyway, so if people are interested in seeing that there's truth behind what I'm saying in that regard, at least, and to just feel normal, and look up the Great Wall of Vagina project.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell, for all the knowledge you've shared today, and I'm grateful that you were willing to be a part of this conversation.
Oh, we learned so much, and thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Womxnhood podcast, and I'll see y'all in the next episode.